Jacksonville. The child was born and couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts for poor whites and blacks and their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history of this land of flowers.
From WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network, the week that was, on the 30th of March, 2019. Very interesting week here. And we had all kinds of drama imported in the American political lexicon. DJ Trump went out to Michigan, Grand Rapids, had a rally there, talked about the Mueller report. We have Uncle Carl Rove here also talking about the Mueller report he's writing in the Wall Street Journal. We'll start here and then we'll go to the Cook Report. There's an article by Amy Walter and of course by Charlie Cook, and in between we'll look at Jennifer Duffy. She covers basically the Congress. Anyway, we'll get these reports and we'll see how we can tie everything together here, starting off with the Mueller report. As we stated on our special Mueller report broadcast, that we never did at this mic play up the Mueller report, because the Mueller report is the Mueller report. Now what we got was effectively a 3-page summary by the Attorney General Barr, a Republican type that's been around forever, appointed by DJ Trump, and it's a summary. Barr has said that sometime in April the so-called redacted report will be out and the public will have an opportunity to read it. Now what usually happens if you have a summary report that is a summary, how objective it is, we don't know. It could be subjective, and we'll find out, and it'll be analyzed once the report is sent out there. And Trump will either rise or fall by his pronouncements. Now let me read this. On the 28th, Uncle Carl is writing, move on from Mueller. Mr. President, only Donald Trump's inauguration in 2017 could have been a sweeter day for the present occupant of the White House than last Sunday, the publication of Barr's letter summarizing the special counsel's report that lifted enormous political weight off of President Trump and his quote-unquote team. Some would call that his gang, but anyway, nonetheless found no evidence that Trump's campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Barr concluded the evidence developed during the investigation is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense. These findings demolished the principal resistance talking points, leaving many Democrats angry and discombobulated. Some, especially in the House, will push for impeachment. Many in the this will euphemize many in the party's hardcore base, but swing voters trust Mueller's core findings and its leader. Speaker Pelosi knows obsessing over impeachment would benefit Trump and the Republicans, but she will find it hard to contain her caucus's over age of members. Witness Intelligence Committee Chairman Sharp doubling down Tuesday on allegations of collusion. The President and his allies have raised concerns about how the Federal Bureau of Investigation brought on this investigation, especially pointing to possible abuse in seeking the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act's warrants. Did the FBI tell the FISA that the information supporting the warrants request came from oppositional research bankrolled by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party? These questions should be answered, but Trump need not devote much time to pressing them. He can count on Barr, the FBI Director Wary, and the Justice Department Inspector General Horowitz to continue cleaning up the FBI and Department of Justice. Horowitz is already investigating possible FISA abuses. There's also the Senate Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham, which is a joke, who promised to get to the bottom of disturbing aspects of the Justice Department's 2016-2007 archives. As House Manager of the 1998 Clinton impeachment effort, he learned the importance of not overplaying your hand. I didn't remember him as being one of the House managers. Anyway, Trump now has an unusual chance to fashion something like the presidential honeymoon, but the media's bitterness over Clinton's loss denied him when he took office. Team Trump should use the Mueller report to pivot to issues like the economy, the opioid crises, and that matter to swing voters who will decide the 2020 presidential election. As they do, Trump needs to understand that despite months of relentless rallying against a witch hunt, his supporters are not as revved up as his detractors. The conclusion of a March 20th Fox poll, which surveyed voters before the probe ended, while it found that Trump's approval rating was at 46%. That's high, approaching February of 2017's 48%. Only 27% strongly approved of the president, while 42% strongly disapproved. The Mueller report may help Trump's ratings and, more important, drive an increase in his strong approval numbers and a decrease in his strong disapproval numbers. After all, he was proven right and his worst detractors were proven wrong. But reiterating old grievances about investigations on fairness won't materially change those ratings. The president should focus his time, voice tweeters on the roaring economy. The roaring economy is not roaring anymore. Impressive job creation and bigger paychecks. The Fox poll found that even with partisan polarization and the cutter of the Mueller report, 50% approved of the handling of the economy, while 42% disapproved. A March 17th CNN survey found 71% rated the economy as good versus only 27% as poor. Well, the economy itself is in trouble. Now old DJ is ranting and raving about the Fed should decrease the interest rate by a half point, roughly 50 basis points, 25 basis points, I'm guessing. I'm not sure what DJ Trump has in his mind. The problem here, and we'll talk about it on a Numbers Man, and how this relates, interest rates. Interest rates, of course, in our opinion, should be this year, if things continue as they are, should be raised 1 or 2 times. And that, for a number of technical reasons, won't go into here. But this whole idea of Trump and lower interest rates, well, lower interest rates artificially stimulate an economy that is ailing, and it's not ailing for interest rates. Mortgage rates are at its lowest in many years, and that's basically where it, haven't looked at credit card rates. We'll have to look at credit card rates, but that's basically where houses are. The housing industry is not a hot market, primarily because first-time buyers are excluded, not because of interest rates, but because of credit scores, etc., and also finding just properties that are available that they can afford. So those are some of the problems out there. But now DJ Trump has decided he would embark on other and bigger things. He has ordered his Justice Department to enter a lawsuit to abolish the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. That would abolish pre-existing conditions. I believe we'll have Amy Walter on that in just a second here, but we'll do a segue into it. And also he signed an order permitting the Keystone pipeline, one of our long causes. The Keystone has been a battleground, a rally cry. Environmental issues now, like the Keystone, don't take as much of front stage, but they do on the terms of climate change. Now young people are coming out demonstrating. They had a very large demonstration in Germany, and these are high schoolers and junior high schoolers demonstrating on the issue of climate change. So in other words, it's an international type of situation. What we're seeing on many key issues now is more of an internationalization of it, just as Trump has tried to nationalize his campaign. And in a number of issues, we just go ahead and cover it here. This is from Reuters. Beto O'Rourke will have a big rally today in his hometown of El Paso, Texas, right on the border, ground zero. The Trump whole build a wall policy. While we're talking about build a wall, we'll look at another wall here. This is from Telesur. You just hear some of the let me get to it here. Oops, we don't want to do a ping pong silly. Let's see if we can get this in. This is Gaza, where they build a wall, and supposedly said you can hear people milling around. This is 4 hours ago. The Great March of Return protesters are expected along the Israeli Gaza border on Saturday, as protesters call for the right of return there. And the demonstration was just kicking off here. Even see a vendor selling whatever out there, and just you can see people moving along that border, and you can see a wall there. The whole idea here is DJ Trump. There's talk of the same company that built this wall in the occupied zone of Bill 1 in on the U.S. Mexico border. Trump has threatened to literally close the border. That situation he can do, but we at this mic would dare him to do it. What would happen? It would be a massive disruption, economic disruption, in cities like El Paso, San Antonio, San Diego, etc. If he's closing the entire border, would have suffered economically. People that work in those cities that cross the bridge either by foot or by motor car would not be able to work. And effectively, the longer the border would be closed, you would start to see the economic impact in those areas. And this tells one right away what is happening there. What would happen there is a disaster, another Trump disaster. Now, would that have ripple effects across, say, the state of Texas? Well, a lot of that would depend. Regionally, it would if the border would stay closed long enough. And this is something that Trump is increasingly facing. So Uncle Carl is absolutely incorrect that Trump had his triumph. That triumph was on a summary. Now, in April, the full report will come out. There no doubt will be later summaries here on that particular situation. We'll cover Beto O'Rourke and many others out here. Let's go to the Cook Report now. Let me see here. This is Healthcare. Amy Walter here. She's also on the public radio, has a program over there. She was writing on the 28th of March. We'll just kind of summarize this, read a little bit from it. The Senate Leader McConnell likes to say there's nothing to learn from second kick of a mule, but Trump's White House is doing its best to challenge that after failing to repeal Obamacare in 2017, therefore failing to fulfill his so-called campaign promise made for the last 7 years. Republicans still managed to pass a bill through the House that put the GOP on the hook for attempting to undercut the popular program. The latest Kaiser tracking poll found the law with a 50% favorable rating to a 40% unfavorable rating, and as important, strong support for the law is equal to a strong opposition, 27% strongly favored and 28% very unfavorable. This is a big change from 2016, when those who felt very unfavorable about Obamacare outnumbered those who really liked it by 13 points. 32% were very unfavorable to 19% as being very favorable. The late great Jerry Pippin talked about this in his broadcast, that the longer people were exposed to Obamacare, they would like it, and that is what has happened. For much of 2019, however, the attention has been on the Democrats and their internal debate over whether to get where to go with health care pushed along by 2020 contesters. The Democrats are no longer talking about fixing or shoring up the Affordable Care Act, but instead are calling for more expansive government role in health care delivery. Republicans were looking forward to labeling Democrats as a party of socialism and gutting private insurance, health insurance. And now there's empirical evidence that the Democratic voters are significantly more interested in seeing the Democrats focus on Medicare for all than they ever were a few years ago. Yes, the White House decision to support a complete repeal with no obvious legislative strategy to replace it allows the Democrats to pivot from playing defense on socialism to playing offense and attacking Republicans for trying to take away the popular Obamacare provisions like Medicaid. They've been working on this for a very, very long time. The Department of Justice decision, meanwhile, was only the most recent action taken by Trump to try and repeal Obamacare. Ron Brownstein, one of the smartest political analysts around, and especially on issues of health care reform, recently wrote that the 2020 federal budget that Trump unveiled, he renewed his commitment to repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it with block grant system, would likely strip coverage for millions of Americans, especially those in primarily blue states that have effectively implemented the law. He once again promoted sweeping cuts to Medicaid programs vet could eliminate coverage of a million. The proposed budget gives less attention, gets less attention, than the Justice Department in part because of the trimming. This is supposed to be a good week for the GOP. They were more happy to take the victory lap on the Mueller report. It all points back to the best news. The GOP joked one Republican strategist to me the other day is that the White House is terrible at follow through, despite reports of Trump putting pressure on Republicans to be the party of health care. His party no longer has complete control of Congress, nor buy-in from GOP members. Reports in Capitol Hill show a less than enthusiastic response from members across the board to the idea of engaging in another healthcare fight before 2020. There's no chance of legislative action. The issue in the hands of the courts. The Fifth Circuit could overturn a lower court ruling that declared the lower unconstitutional. And I think it's out of Texas. They are in the Fifth. The fate could end up at the Supreme Court, and of course that could backfire spectacularly on the GOP right before the 2020 election. As the Washington Post writes, if the law is struck down, the GOP's Republicans' fate, that the party will be blamed for more than 20 million people losing their health care, which has a dynamic impact on the entire healthcare ecosystem. When 20 million people lose their care, that puts additional cost burdens on medical centers and medical providers. Insurance will eventually go up on all of the people that they cover. Now, also to note, many of these so-called plans are maybe not skimpy plans that are provided by businesses, but they have very high deductibles. We may not see any real action on Obamacare this year or next. Even so, the entire episode is yet a reminder that the president's going to run his 2020 campaign exactly the way he ran his 2016, which is not very smart. Instead of mining opportunities to exploit Democrat weaknesses with swing voters, the president will focus on keeping his own voters happy. That wouldn't be a problem if they were popular, but with hardcore base of basically 28 to 30%, job approval rating around 45, and less than that most of the time. That's from Amy Walter, and let me see what else we have pulled out of here. Jennifer Dunn, the issue of health care were a movie, the congressional Republicans would be watching The Shining, and while the Democratic counterparts would be viewing Back to the Future. Voters, though, are not being focused to set through the sixth consecutive showing of Groundhog Day. This week's announcement, the Department of Justice would support a district court ruling that the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, is unconstitutional. The case is now before the Fifth. That's set in New Orleans. I believe it's in Atlanta. Anyway, many legal experts believe that the lower court ruling will be upheld. Presumably the case will then move on to the U.S. Supreme Court. Trump is fully supportive of the Justice Department action because it would may well give him what Congress hasn't, a full repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Then, of course, it'll set up a brutal fight. The Democrats paid the price for their support of the Affordable Care Act in 2010, 2012, and the 2014 elections. Over that period, Democrats lost a majority in the House and the Senate, as well as a handful of governorships. The table started to turn in 2016, and in 2018, Democrats were on the offensive. A lot of this was because of mismanagement. Practically speaking, the Supreme Court may not even hear the case before 2020. Even if they do, the lower court ruling upheld, and the vast majority of consumers would feel the impact immediately. But in siding with the lower court's ruling, the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional. Trump and the Department of Justice have handed the Democrats a potential weapon. There's no doubt about that. But they've handed Bernie Sanders a weapon there in his Medicaid for All campaign. About 155 million people under the age of 65 get health care through their employer. If the court overturns the ACA, it would mean that insurance companies no longer have to provide coverage for those with pre-existing conditions and dependents up to age 26. The mandate private care services, screenings, preventive health care would disappear for adults and children, and would the caps on out-of-pocket costs. Now, those are the things that they don't talk about when Trump talks about getting insurance that is the best. That simply just does not happen. The pre-existing conditions are one of those things that will create a very, very big situation as a game breaker. Along the aisles, the GOP are blindsided by the administration decision, which the leaderships in both chambers thinks a major mistake. The minority leader, McCarthy, he's from California, told Trump that he's against the decision to pursue it in a court. Now, Susan Collins is there, and who made it clear she believes the decision is ill-conceived. Privately, some Senate Republicans and strategists expressed their displeasure. They were swayed by Trump's, weren't swayed by his prep talk in a closed-door meeting. It's tending to be a more of a routine with DJ Trump. He's now going to the most reactionary of his advisors, whether it be on health care, foreign policy in Venezuela, and the whole issue of the border, the Keystone Pipeline. It's almost like a man that's in a hurry to get things done, but feels that he will not get reelected. Now, our model now starting to show more and more the Ouija board that DJ Trump will not be reelected. If there were a rematch of the 2016 election between Hillary Rodham Clinton and DJ Trump, she would win the race. That's how desperate things are. And we'll get to some of the other candidates here with the right-wing Harvard-Harris poll. Let me just finish this up here. Moreover, congressional Republicans know too well that regardless of what happens in court, Trump has squeezed the toothpaste out of the tube. I like the way she says that. And doesn't have any way to put it back in. Well, no doubt about that. He has made errors that should not be made. We'll have on the Monday morning quarterback. That's when we'll go to Charlie Cook. Anyway, nonetheless, where is somewhere here is our poll. I will line up in the Washington Post. Okay, we need to get up here. We already covered the Reuters story of Beto O'Rourke and his rally later today in El Paso. Incidentally, he is scheduled to hold rallies in Houston and in Austin, Texas. If you recall, he had a dueling rally at one time in El Paso. DJ Trump was there, and he was a few blocks away. He had more people than DJ Trump. Incidentally, that will be live streamed about 1,000 locations across America, according to his campaign. And we'll cover it one way or the other. We'll get it done. All right, let's move on here. This is on the foreign policy scene here. The Post and Reuters and BBC have all been on the side of Trump, and some in the Democratic Party have come out against Venezuela. What they don't understand is the only thing the Trump administration could do, they've tried sanctions. Sanctions aren't working. They tried sabotage, literally having snipers shoot into power station transformers, start fires, etc. That is working better than some of the other tricks they pulled. But with that, as LBJ would say, they'll go into the well too many times. Two Russian military planes last weekend, this time landed in Caracas, carrying personnel basically in cyber communications and some also special forces types. They have incident in Venezuela. They have opened a new training center on how to fly some of the helicopters that they have, and tankers arriving there, all sorts of things. Venezuelan crude to India. They are trying to talk India into not buying crude oil from Venezuela. These economic boycotts, as the mother of all of those these boycotts, they had it against the Russian Federation, the Democratic Republic of North Korea. They still have that going. Incidentally, it come out that Trump delivered a paper in both Korean and in English to Kim Jong-un. Chairman Un looked at the paper. What he basically said was the Koreans were to give up all of their nuclear weapons after the Libyan model. That's John Bolton going with that. We remember what happened. The Libyan model, Colonel Gaddafi did ship those to Oak Ridge, the nuclear weapons that he had, the developmental stage, and he was later murdered. So they aren't going to buy that. So in other words, it's a non-starter, it's an insult, a big foreign policy affair on the part of DJ Trump. This is another situation with Bolton has been around for a very long time. But these tricks don't work anymore because more and more international foreign policy is a counterbalance to Wilsonian foreign policy, racist Wilsonian foreign policy. And President Maduro Moros has said that this is a white supremacy there, and they brought that term into the Venezuelan campaign, and that plays very well. The foreign minister of Venezuela, Jorge Arena, has been touring South Africa and various Namibia on the African continent. He finished a tour there, and the African countries are behind Venezuela. Now, when they give this false number of 50 nations supporting Juan Guaido, well, that's basically the U.S., Canada, and Europe, and some of their smaller lackeys that they have put in. They even tried to persuade some people in the Caribbean, a few nations there, to support this activity. It's kind of like what happened, Minister Farrakhan was talking about this, is what happened with Eugenia Charles. Eugenia Charles sold out the Caribbean, and that was in the struggle over Grenada. And she'll go down in history as a sellout, and basically got nothing out of it from the Reagan administration but promises. But that is not the case. You have Guatemala, El Salvador, and these countries ruled by right-wing parties, the center-right party. In fact, it's so bad that in Guatemala, Omont, the rabid fascist that fortunately died, his daughter is now being permitted to run for the presidency there in Guatemala. So things will not improve in Guatemala. They will not improve in El Salvador. That's why people are leaving in great numbers. These migrants that are coming in here now are coming from those nations and other nations outside of Mexico. So that has created a foreign policy crisis, and it is apparent that type of policy doesn't work. Well, what does the Trump administration have in a quote-unquote toolbox? Well, sanctions. And now what sanctions mean is very important to understand this economic a lesson. You cannot put economic sanctions on a person, or on a nation, I should say, unless the nation is economically weak in those particular situations. Now, Iran is a very good example. They've had sanctions on Iran forever, and Iran is still in the business since the days of Ayatollah Khomeini. So now this situation, sanctions on Syria and sanctions here. But what is happening more and more to this cabal of capitalist nations is they're in trouble. In the UK, they're trying to leave the EU. They've tried the third time. Now they're talking about a fourth time that they'll try to vote to leave. They're getting close. I think they were 53 votes or so out. But this is just sheer folly. It shows the weakness. And other economies in the EU are not in as great a shape as they should be. So that means a decline on a global situation. That's something that Trump's interest rate lowering would not help, nor that during the Obama administration, the reactionary Republicans yelled that the Fed should start selling off their balance sheet. Well, they are. They're now doing it. They slowed down some. But what that basically tells you is they're keeping this thing on this economy on a life support. So let me move away from that. And that's a simulator. This is the Air Force simulator there. Vladimir, he's a defense minister in Venezuela. Lopez announced that, and they showed the new training center there. And absolutely nothing they can do about it. The arrogance they had was to have to order the Russian Federation out of Venezuela. Good luck on that one. And also China has sent 7 tons of medical relief to Venezuela. 7.5 tons of that was what Moscow delivered, and 7.7 more tons there. So in other words, more and more aid coming to Venezuela. They need to upgrade the electrical system there. No doubt that will be done. We talked about the permit on the Keystone XL pipeline. That has been blocked in court. There will be more in courts also. There's a state hearing in Nebraska by landowners that would run over on its way to Steel City. I knew one lady lived in Steel City. Nebraska there. So this is 100,000. This is effectively 1,700 miles there from Hardisty, Alberta to Steel City, Nebraska. And it runs on there to Cushing, Oklahoma, and on to Texas. Now, 830,000 barrels of crude oil per day. That is a 36-inch pipe from Alberta and Montana to Oklahoma and onto the Gulf of Mexico. President Obama went there to inaugurate the rest of that pipeline, which runs from Cushing down to the refineries in the Gulf of Mexico. Just a short thing. This character has been getting a lot of press lately. Headline the Post: Evangelicals help get Trump into the White House. Pete, and let me just make sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly here. This is Pete Buttigieg. That's how they say it's pronounced. B-U-D-D Buttigieg. H.A. Judge. Anyway, and he has a husband. Oh boy. Anyway, whatever, machinations there. But what is important there is that he is one of these people that is a God boy, and he's an Episcopalian, I think. Was a Rhodes Scholar. Wrote his dissertation on Puritanism, I believe, is what it stands there. I read this earlier. Excuse me. As growing up, his parents were interested in Christianity, but not at a church type situation. They were academics, which tells you a lot. Let's see. Yeah, the Puritan. He was at Harvard, and all these people, even Lion Ted Cruz was at Harvard. He was a Rhodes Scholar, and that's a political appointment there. So somebody political appointed him. He now calls himself liturgically more conservative, preferring to be in a group setting with a set of liturgies. He tries to attend services, spends time reading scripture when he can. Oh boy. He says he looks for Christian inspiration from people who put faith in action, as Dr. King and Dr. Barber of the Moral Crusade, a majority crusade there, and the Poor People's March. Well, he's a liar, but anyway, this, again, this is one of those type of situations here. That what the Democratic Party does not need another God boy. Some that have highlighted their faith in the race here. Twitter King Booker, we mentioned him on Facebook, and Elizabeth Warren. I didn't know she was into the God boy thing, but anyway, a God girl, I guess, in her case. Anyway, respects early Christian theologians. Oh boy. Like James Martin, and on Saturday, Budagan and Martin will get awards, from some gay and lesbian organization from Notre Dame and St. Mary's College. Anyway, in Iowa, he's with the 6% club, means he has 6% in the polling there in Iowa. He is a Christian. He's a clean-cut looking one, a Rust Belt city. I've been to South Bend a number of times, and South Bend, of course, has Notre Dame. It's a college town, and I wouldn't call it a Rust Belt city. I don't remember seeing any plants hanging around there. But if he wants to be that, he may be that. It doesn't matter that much. But the corporate media pushing him up. Let's get some polling in here. This is from this right-wing Harris poll owned by Pinhead Penn. He has Biden up by 26 to 18 for Bernie Sanders, 11. For Harris, O'Rourke has 5% here. Let's see. Elizabeth Warren, 5%. Twitter King Booker, 3. Bullinger, 2, Amy Klobuchar, 1, and so forth, and so on. Now, the Emerson poll, and we had it on, I believe, Friday Jobber, has Biden up at 39. That'd be 19 points to 20 for Bernie Sanders, and this is in Pennsylvania, but that's his home state there. 11 for Elizabeth Warren. Bulligan at 6, and O'Rourke at 5, Harris at 5, Twitter King Booker at 5, Gabon at 3, and Gillibrand at 2, etc. there. And let's see, the approval ratings here. This is on Friday. The Pew has old DJ Trump at 41. The NPR poll, Marcus College, has him at 44, so that's in the outliner Rasmussen at 49 there, and I don't think we have any new polls here. I hadn't looked, but we'll look here and we'll go and do the sports. We'll have the rest of Charlie Cook, and we'll get to some Nate Silver. No, Friday's all we got. Anyway, let's see here. We'll get the men's part of March Madness. The score here: Virginia Tech 73, Duke 75. Escaped by another 2-pointer once again, and Auburn 97-80 over North Carolina. Michigan State and LSU. Michigan State 82-63. Auburn 97-80 over North Carolina. We already gave that one. And Kentucky 62-58 over Houston. So we have now set to move. Let's see where we're moving to. Oops. We'll have Texas Tech and Gonzaga, and Purdue and Virginia. They will play at 6. Gonzaga's at 6 o'clock and Eastern Time, and the Boilermakers and Virginia is at around 9 o'clock. We'll call it. And let's see, this is on the 30th. And then on Sunday we'll have Auburn and Kentucky. That'll be the early show. At 2:20 on CBS. They'll both be on CBS. And Michigan State versus Duke. So this is the 8, and then we'll be moving on towards the Final Four. And I believe the Final Four in Louisville. Anyway, that is that story. Let us move on here to Major League Baseball. I think the big question, incidentally, in March Madness, will Duke survive? They've escaped by 2-pointers. The third time there, that'll be interesting to see what happens there with Duke. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Anyway, the Blue Jays 6 shutout to Tigers 6-zip. The Astros were beaten by the Rays 4-2. The Rockies beat the Marlins 6-1. The Cardinals win a game over Milwaukee 9-5. The Angels and Athletics. The Angels are 6-2 over the Athletics. And in 13, a slugfest down in Los Angeles. The D-backs 5-4. The winner, let me see who. Garcia was a loser, and I'm not even sure. Andrus. Anyway, and the Giants were beaten by the Padres 4-1, and the Red Sox beat the Mariners in Seattle 7-6. On to hockey. The Blues and Rangers. Rangers 4-2. The Predators and our Penguins. The Predators outlast the Penguins 3-1, and the Devils were shut out by the Red Wings 4-zip. The Coyotes and Avalanche. It was the Avalanche over the Coyotes. I guess there's big snowfall there. The Anaheim, the Ducks, the Anaheim and the Flames. The Flames stopped the Ducks 6-1. And finally, the Wild over the Golden Knights of Vegas 3-2. And to women's college ball, we don't want to leave anyone out here. UConn 69-61 over UCLA. And Mississippi State 76-53 over Arizona State. And Louisville 61-44 over Oregon State. And the Ducks beat South Dakota 63-53. So something was accomplished there. We always get something accomplished. We'll get Beto O'Rourke's rally down in Texas to number those. We are trying to start a series here called On the Road, and we'll see where it goes. Period. Back to the Gaza situation, 1,000 mark anniversary of the Gaza protests. This is from the BBC here. Tens of thousands of Palestinians are demonstrating in Gaza to mark the anniversary start of weekly protests on the border with the Zionist state of Israel. Demonstrators were there, no doubt. And what happened so far? Well, they've had a merry, merry old time. At least one Palestinian protester, a 17-year-old boy, has been killed. Dozens more have been wounded. That's according to the Palestinian authorities. Israeli government designates Hamas, well, this is very interesting. This is in the BBC Dispatch, as a terrorist group act. In fact, the Israeli Mossad founded Hamas. Liars, liars for a day there. So this is some of what is going on. Let's see if we can get, I don't know if we'll have any audio from this report or not. No, this is just shows the people there. Let's go very quickly here to Reuters. I don't know if Reuters has anything on this or not. This is a piece of paper story. You'll see it all over the place. Trump called Kim to hand over his nuclear weapons. This is silly. This is getting to be a child's play situation there. Oh boy. Trudeau is evidently in trouble in Canada. Fresh documents there. He'll probably be out of the game very, very quickly there. The Reuters story is basically the same on Gaza, and we'll of course look at this on BR on the World. Thousands of Palestinians, of course, rallying there in the Gaza on the Strip. The military, this is the Israeli military, 40,000 people gathered on the frontier area. That's according to them. A lot of people. So they had a mediation by the Egyptians. But the rockets were flying, all sorts of things are flying around here. And I don't think we have anything new from Tel Assur. We don't. Anyway, this will do it for us. We'll see you on the Monday morning quarterback on Monday morning. And that will actually be April Fool's Day. See how many fools show up on that day. And we have probably some birthday wishes for some people out there, including H. But interesting as we go here. We'll have This Week in Economics and see where that is going. Hopefully somewhere. And we have the open source report. We almost finished it. What happened was we had some technical difficulties, and we're still working past the technical difficulties. One of our limiters went down, so we had to fix that. Hadn't got it fixed yet, but we'll get it fixed. Anyway, we're back. We're as they say, moving along here. I hope the sound is at least decent. Audacity will use more software editing. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on Monday morning. Boston Red in the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth on the 30th of March 2019. Good day.